Welcome to our channel, Psyverge. Why do some women keep ending up with the same kind of man, the one who lies, manipulates, and wounds them over and over again? Why are they repelled by stability and drawn toward chaos? Why does kindness feel boring, while emotional volatility feels like passion? And is it really love, or is it a trauma disguised as chemistry? These are not easy questions, but they're the kind of questions we need to ask if we want to understand the darker side of human attraction. Because attraction isn't always about compatibility or shared values. Sometimes, it's about wounds that recognize each other. Sometimes the heart doesn't fall in love. It falls into a familiar pattern. And that pattern is often rooted not in who we are now, but in what we were once missing. A lot of people assume that women who are attracted to toxic men are simply naive or lack self-respect. But this view is shallow. Human behavior is rarely that simple. In reality, many of these women are intelligent, self-aware, and even successful. So what's going on under the surface? To understand that, we need to dive into what psychology calls repetition compulsion, a concept developed by Sigmund Freud. It's the unconscious urge to recreate past emotional experiences, especially unresolved ones, even when they were painful. If a woman grew up around emotional instability, an absent father, a critical mother, or inconsistent love, then emotional chaos feels familiar. And what's familiar often feels safe, even if it's toxic. Toxic men often mimic the emotional patterns these women experienced early in life. They're hot and cold. One moment, they're deeply affectionate. The next, they're distant or cruel. This unpredictability creates a psychological hook. It mimics the intermittent reinforcement seen in gambling addictions. You never know when the jackpot of affection is coming, but when it does, it feels euphoric. And the brain becomes wired to chase that high. But this isn't just about childhood wounds. There's also a deep philosophical truth here, rooted in existentialism. Sartre believed that people are condemned to be free. With freedom comes anxiety. And one way to escape that anxiety is to attach ourselves to others who dominate our emotional world. Toxic partners often offer a kind of false certainty. They create drama, and in that chaos, the individual feels alive, even if they're suffering. In contrast, emotionally stable partners often don't produce that same emotional intensity. Not because they're lacking, but because they don't trigger the nervous system in the same way. For someone conditioned to associate love with anxiety and longing, peace can feel unfamiliar, and unfamiliar often feels empty. Another dimension is the allure of the dark triad personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Research shows that individuals with these traits can be highly charming at first. They exude confidence, dominance, and a sense of danger that can be intoxicating. In evolutionary terms, these traits signal strength, control, and even protection, qualities that can feel appealing, especially to someone who has felt powerless in the past. But this attraction is deceptive. These men know how to mirror their target's desires, craft their image, and manipulate emotions to gain control. It's not love, it's a power game. And many women fall into the trap thinking they've found a strong partner, only to discover later they've handed over their emotional autonomy. There's also the element of self-worth. When a person deep down believes they are not worthy of real love, they will often sabotage it, or avoid it altogether. Toxic partners validate that internal belief. When they hurt, neglect, or belittle, the inner voice says, "See, this is what you deserve." It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. In this way, the toxic relationship becomes a mirror, not of who the woman truly is, but of how she sees herself. And walking away from that kind of relationship isn't just about leaving a person. It's about confronting a worldview that says, love must hurt. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said that love is a trap laid by nature for the continuation of the species. From a biological standpoint, we may be wired to chase traits that are not always emotionally healthy. Excitement, dominance, unpredictability. These can signal reproductive fitness, even when they destroy psychological well-being. It's a cruel trick of evolution. What feels exciting may not be what's good for us. And then there's the idea of the wounded healer, a psychological archetype described by Carl Jung. Many women who are drawn to toxic men have a deep desire to fix, to heal, to rescue. They see the brokenness in the other person, and they hope that their love will be enough to change them. In reality, they're often projecting their own wounds outward, trying to heal themselves by healing someone else. But relationships aren't therapy, and love isn't medicine. It's a partnership. And when one partner is constantly bleeding, the other eventually starts to bleed too. Why doesn't logic work in these situations? Why do so many women stay even after they know the man is hurting them? Because love, especially toxic love, is not rational. It's deeply emotional and often unconscious. It operates beneath the surface, fueled by fear, past trauma, low self-worth, and distorted ideas about what love is supposed to feel like. In many cases, walking away from a toxic man feels like giving up on a fantasy. The fantasy that if you just love enough, prove yourself enough, endure enough, he will finally change. But that change rarely comes. What comes instead is emotional burnout, shattered self-esteem, and sometimes a complete loss of identity. Healing from this pattern starts with awareness. Recognizing the emotional blueprint you're carrying. Understanding that love is not supposed to feel like war. That peace is not boring. It's safe. And that being loved consistently is not a red flag. It's the standard. Some women are drawn to toxic men because, deep down, they believe that they have to fight for love. That love must be earned. That safety is suspicious. But these beliefs aren't facts. They're stories. Often inherited, often unexamined. And like any story, they can be rewritten. The truth is, being attracted to toxic men doesn't make someone weak. It means there's a wound that needs tending. A part of them that's still waiting for a different ending. The task isn't to chase the bad boy and try to change him. It's to sit with the discomfort of being loved well. Without chaos. Without fear. Without conditions. Because the real challenge isn't surviving toxicity. The real challenge is allowing yourself to be loved in a way that doesn't hurt. And until that's understood, until peace is no longer mistaken for boredom, until chaos is no longer mistaken for love, the cycle continues. But cycles can be broken. And the first step is asking the hard questions. Just like we did. And here's where the cycle tightens its grip. Many women don't realize they're even in a pattern. Each new relationship feels different at first. The man seems unique. His pain is different. His story is deeper. His charm more intense. But the emotional destination is always the same. Confusion, disappointment, pain. And yet, the hope persists. Maybe this one will be different. But toxic men are experts in a certain emotional language. They know how to listen just enough. How to reveal just enough vulnerability to seem human, while still maintaining control. They don't fall in love, they conquer. And for a woman who's used to equating love with earning affection, this performance feels intoxicating. It feels like she's being led into something sacred, when really, she's being slowly cut off from herself. Why is it so hard to leave someone who's clearly damaging you? Because trauma bonds form in these relationships. These are deep psychological attachments rooted not in love, but in cycles of abuse and reward. After emotional withdrawal comes affection. After criticism, an apology. And the brain learns to associate pain with reward. This is the same mechanism that keeps gamblers glued to their machines, waiting for the next hit of dopamine. It's not love. It's addiction. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." Many women only see the pattern when they're completely drained, when they've given every part of themselves to someone who was never truly available. And looking back, they see a string of red flags they justified. They remember the moments their gut whispered this isn't safe, but they silenced it in the name of love. There's also the influence of cultural narratives. Media, romance novels, and even films often glorify the tortured man, the one who's cruel but deep, cold but passionate. Women are told that love means saving him, that if you stay long enough, fight hard enough, love big enough, he'll transform. But that storyline rarely plays out in real life. In reality, staying too long doesn't lead to transformation, it leads to trauma. And sometimes, the biggest breakthrough comes not from leaving him, but from finally choosing yourself. From realizing that love should feel like support, not survival. That passion shouldn't feel like anxiety. That true connection doesn't drain you, it gives you room to breathe. This awakening isn't easy. It often comes after tears, breakdowns, late-night realizations, and long periods of self-reflection. But it's the first real taste of freedom, and it often marks the beginning of a different kind of attraction, one rooted not in the excitement of danger, but in the quiet strength of peace.